So what's going on?
Two things. It's not good to drink coffee in the morning without water and without eating first.
Why is that?
I don't know. It tends to make you more. It makes me more like jittery. Like
Jittery?
yeah.
Okay.
So
No, it gives me the shot in the arm I need.
does it with
Yeah.
having it without anything first?
Yeah.
Really?
Well, so, and especially this morning, I had a 2.5-year-old wake up at 4:15
Oh, that's brutal.
and didn't want to go back to sleep. So we came down, like I got, we have a little recliner in his room. So I went in and got him. I said, all right, let's sit here, try to get him back to sleep. And he's like, no, no, no. I'm pointing to the door. I'm like, everything is still asleep. Everybody's still asleep. And he didn't want to hear it. So we came down, we sat on the couch. Like I put the recliner up in the living room. We were sitting there and he'd look up at me every once in a while. And probably about 45 minutes went by, maybe even an hour. And I'm like, all right, you're awake. Uh-huh. Do you want some breakfast? Uh-huh. How about some eggs? Uh-huh. I'm like, all right, I'll go make you some eggs.
That is
So I'm in
awesome.
the kitchen at 5:15. Now, I mean, normally when he comes down at 6:45, 7 o'clock, I've got, my wife or I have breakfast ready for him to go. But here I am at 5:15 in the morning, scrambling up some eggs for him. And so, of course, at that point, I'm also making myself a cup of coffee
Yeah.
to get going.
Well, I don't remember that cadence because I'm looking at mine. Oh, here he comes. He just got up. It's 11.
Nice.
That's, I guess, one of the joys of homeschool. You can do things that is not asynchronous. You can do things on your own schedule, which I think is actually an interesting, completely separate conversation. But we've talked about it a lot from a remote work perspective, like
Hmm.
working the hours that you feel the most energized. Like you're in
Hmm.
the zone. It's like, man, watching him do that for school, like going to school, the hours he feels the most alert and awake is amazing. It's like
Hmm.
I don't have to force him to go to school at 7:30 in the morning when he doesn't want to. Like
Yeah.
he can do it on his time when he's ready. So
No, like, and the homeschooling conversation has come up, between the two of us, my wife and I, that is, thinking about, like, especially over the last 6 months, as I've really tried to embrace working remotely, like actually working remotely and taking advantage of just being able to go somewhere else, get a change of scenery. And I'm like, what if we did that with him as well? Like there's got to be groups out there,
oh yeah.
activities out there where he still has interaction with other kids,
hmm
but we can still, get both of us get all of our work done before Friday, and then Friday go off and do some kind of activity. Because one of the things I started talking to you about this, and like I'm really working to do it, is restructure my week a bit where all of the work I need to use the laptop for gets done Monday through Thursday,
hmm
and then try to have it so that all the work I need to do on Friday can all be done on the iPad.
mm
So then this way I can go somewhere on Fridays, like whether it's going to story hour with my wife and my son, and I'll sit there, I'll have the iPad and I'll work, but I'll still be there with them, maybe go out somewhere with them and have, still be able to get work done, but still go out and do their different things. And then also, like, the benefit of that, and we've talked about that, is trying to change up scenery
hmm
so that it kind of gets the creative juices flowing.
So what are you able to what are you able to get done on the iPad? I know people do it, but for me it's my son's device that he plays Roblox and Minecraft on. So I've never thought of it as like a business
Yeah.
device.
There's individual apps for Notion, for Evernote, for Workflowy, for what's the one I'm blanking on? Trello.
Trello.
So those tools, which we all use, Notion for internal communication and planning, Evernote for my week to month to month notes, Workflowy for my day to day and structuring. Okay, this is what I'm going to do next week. I'm slotting this in 2 weeks from now to do that, and then Trello for client milestones. I can do all four there, and then there's an iCloud and Dropbox apps. So the
Mm,
iCloud files, which I can get to all my documents and sync in real time.
hmm
Dropbox is still a little wonky, but like I use Pages for just like random notes throughout the day, and I also use Pages for podcast show notes and
Mm.
planning. So I've got like a calendar in Notion for our content, and then I have the individual show notes per episode and pages. So 2 weeks ago, when I worked from the Ocean City Boardwalk, I sat there for an hour and a half listening to the surf, watching the surfers go by, planning out episodes through the end of this year into January of next year,
That's
all in
awesome.
pages. Pages in Notion. So stubbing out our topics, stubbing out actual episode, like our general topics to span a couple weeks, individual episodes, and then starting to put together the general description of the episode and what I want to talk about. So I could do all of that from the iPad. I use my phone as a personal hotspot. All of those apps will sync in real time as I'm working with it.
Very cool.
And so yeah, I've actually become more productive on it. I do have a coding application. So like if something were to come up, I could technically write code on it. A
Hmm.
little bit harder. But that being said, I also have the laptop. So
Do you have a separate keyboard for the iPad, or do you do the
no,
virtual keywords?
I use the virtual keyboard because the whole point, I wanted a device that's different. Because I
Yeah.
found with myself, because you were talking about finding things that work for you, whether it's
Hmm.
schedule, right times, a change of pace gets the energy and the creative juices flowing for me. So if I were just to replace one laptop with something else that's a laptop, I think it would stagnate it. Even though, believe me, I get gear
No,
envy when I
I
see
hear you.
see the actual like Apple branded keyboard folios and
Hmm.
whatnot. That being said, like just sitting there and having this thing where I can scroll through, type out notes, and just kind of feel like I'm sitting there with a notebook. That's kind of the feel it gives me, sitting there with a notebook, and not a laptop notebook, but like a notebook where I can just start scribbling stuff out,
Yeah.
stubbing things out. Kind of gives me that change.
Very cool. No, that is awesome. Oh, and as a quick side note, I had at lunch the other day with a friend of mine, and if you're not watching the behind the scenes on YouTube, you're not going to get the great visual. But he brought me this little gift, these
Nice.
bookmarks of the Seinfeld characters,
That's awesome.
which I'm kind of doing a balance
Hmm.
of reading on because I picked up the Kindle Paperwhite,
Mm-hmm.
which I've really been enjoying. But I also have some actual books which I really like, and I'm just starting this one, getting things
Mm-hmm.
done.
Nice.
So
Yeah, and there's going back to the iPad, like there is also the Kindle app, so I can sit there and like I usually have 2 or 3 books going at any given
mhm.
time. I could pull it up and just read a bit, read a chapter or so with it.
Nice.
So I mean, it's been a great addition to my work repertoire,
Yeah.
and just kind of adding a mix to it. But it's like the more I've thought about it, and especially like 2 Fridays ago, just working from the beach, I'm like, yeah, I got to make Fridays the day that I get out of the house, whether it's I go somewhere by myself or I go somewhere with my family, with the iPad where I can still get some stuff done. Try to get a change of pace that kind of spark some ideas and start to flesh them out there. But then Monday
Yeah.
through Thursday is the day to really hack away at the desk.
No, I like that, and obviously this isn't a gear show, but I do like the strategy of not having a laptop, into forcing you to be in a different mindset and state. Because I think when you have the laptop, it basically is a mobile desktop, and it's like, well, I've just kind of moved locations. But if you're going to the iPad, it's almost like you're putting yourself in a different flow and state of mind for different, maybe more thinking heavy or centric tasks, but still having some technology to help manage that.
Yeah.
It's a really interesting setup that you've come up with.
And then all of those things we've talked about, whether it's the iCloud and Dropbox syncing, or especially the iCloud syncing, anything I'm using to sync documents there, and then any of the apps I mentioned, it's immediately available on my desktop.
Yeah.
So like, I mean, there are even times where I'll be, sitting here at the desk or standing at the desk. I need to get a new mat for the standing desk. It's been bothering my feet. I need to get something new. But I've been on calls with the laptop and have had the iPad there as kind of the notepad to go through stuff as
Ah.
I'm working. So like
Oh,
that
yeah.
that was honestly yesterday when you and I met and we're going through things. I called you on the phone and just had the iPad and was scrolling through my multiple lists.
Nice.
So it's been good.
Very cool.
It's and I think we need to mix things up every now and then.
I need to wear green more often. It makes my eyes look cool.
Nice.
All right. Well, should we jump into that was a longer than normal cold open, but I think that
It
was a
was.
fascinating set of
It was fun.
topics.
Like I would like to hear from folks about like as people have been forced into remote work, or maybe they had some kind of remote work set up, but it's been, even firmed up even more now. You know, how have people over the last 2 years, have they needed to find ways to adjust or, keep themselves from getting stuck in a rut?
Yeah.
Because whether you're in the office or you're working from home, it's easy to get stuck in a rut.
We all get in that, right?
Mm-hmm.
We all get in that just kind of on autopilot feeling every now and
Mm-hmm.
then. It's good to break
Yeah.
it up.
So I wanted to continue our conversation around quality. And last week we focused on digital analytics agencies and quality and some of the tactics that may not provide necessarily a quality experience in the end. I want to bring it back out and talk a bit broader today. And this is something you and I have talked a lot about offline lately. But why aren't things built to last? Um, why does it feel like quality is a lost art? Um, because we've all heard that adage of, things aren't built to last like they used to. Why does it feel like, quality is not as commonplace? And and I'm not necessarily defining quality. It could be, if it's something physical, the the feel of it, the actual like ability for it to last, or if it's maybe something intangible, in this day and age, software, it just kind of feels like it's slapped together. But in this case, like, let's just go with a broad definition of quality. Why does it feel like? Because I know I'm not the only one that's observed this. That things aren't built to last like they used to, and quality is not commonplace anymore.
Yeah, and where do we start?
There was a good Twitter exchange the other day that I think we can roll into this, and I wrote this before that.
Trying to think back.
Around planned obsolescence.
Yeah, so I think there are aspects where it's a strategy, but I don't know if that's the majority of cases. There are definitely cases we see it all the time, like that thing right there, the printer. Like these things are made so cheaply that for the price of getting a refill in ink, it's like, well, I'll just go buy a new printer. It come with a refill. It's about the same price, like, so
It's no lie.
yeah, I mean, I definitely think that there are items that are planned to be throwaway. I think part of it is also kind of the lost art of having craftsmanship and kind of care for one's art. It in our mass produced society where we need more and more and more for cheap and cheap and cheap, we've kind of pushed in that direction. And so while it may be easy to blame the manufacturer or the craftsperson, a lot of it has been dictated by the market. That we've got these desires for things to be solved immediately, and we also want it cheap. And so you can't get a highly custom, a craftsperson to really do something at a high quality that's going to last quick and cheap. It's that adage of like the legs of the stool, like you get to choose two of these things or three. You have to balance those things. But at one point in time, probably before the invention of the assembly line, um, there was a slower way of doing things, and there was a quality to the way things were put together, that they just, I think, naturally lasted. It wasn't necessarily, I don't think it was necessarily the thought of, well, let's build something to last. It was just like, let's build something good that we're proud of our work, and the output of it was a high quality product that lasts. And I really saw this when I was cleaning out my grandparents' home. Like, so much of what they had acquired was like 60, 70 years old, and it was still in amazingly good condition. In fact, I have a treadmill in my basement that I pulled out of their house that is what now, at least 40 years old now, and it's still like it's a tank. It just runs like a beast. And I know that I have bought equipment. I think I had a bike. I had a elliptical, and it works for 6 to 9 months, and then it literally starts falling apart. But I think that's part of that planned obsolescence. Like, yeah, use it and then buy a new one. So I think there's probably a balance between it being a conscious business decision to build something that you want people to just go buy new hardware because it's planned to break down. And part of it where it's this lost art of caring about your craft. And then part of it, the demand of consumers that they want everything cheap and fast. I think those kind of all play, especially in the hardware, tangible goods space. It may be a slightly different conversation when it comes to services.
Yeah, when you talk about craftsmen, uh, my wife and I have the Discovery Plus network, or the Discovery Plus subscription, and part of that is the Magnolia Network, which is Chip and Joanna Gaines. And then there's a show on there. It just finished up its first season, but it's phenomenal. It's Clint Harp. He's the carpenter they usually work with when they're
Hmm.
working on a home. They usually go to him for something, and so he has his own show, and he partners with a couple different guys that own companies around restoring old buildings, and it is a phenomenal show. There's this one guy, I love when he works with him because he just doesn't know the craft. Like he's not just like the carpentry and the craft of carpentry, he knows the history.
Mm.
So he's giving you a history lesson, and he goes for these buildings, and his team is only focused on two, maybe three projects at a time, but because they take so long, and like they do, like they've taken buildings, broken them down, cataloged where the parts go, taken it back, restored like the old beams, and then put it back up on a new foundation.
Yeah, I mean it. You and I have talked about this network because I have a love of the Saturday create shows on PBS, where like there's just another level of care about the craft of what they're doing that just seems to be missing from so many of these shows that are on cable news or cable networks. And I'm not gonna pick on any specifically, but you can tell that it's more about the facade of what they're doing and personal brands and making money for a lot of these shows, and it's just lacks any depth. You and a lot of these are these home makeover shows. It's like it's manufactured drama and storylines, but there's no depth to what they're actually doing, and it's like I want I want the Woodwright Workshop on PBS. I want someone that's a true craftsperson that knows the history and goes into the detail. And here's why this tool is so perfect for this job. To me, like I miss that. That kind of the romanticism of
Mhm.
really being um, good at what one does. And we've gotten away from that, and it's really frustrating. And there are still a few outliers of companies and brands that have embraced the art of caring about the craft of what they do, but so many it's just about the job. It's just about, yeah, let's just get it out. We don't have time to worry about the craft of it or the experience that we create around it. And I think that drives the outcomes, the products being low quality, falling apart, being more about the appearance than actually the good. Like there's a lot of products out there that the wrapping of it looks amazing, but once you start digging into the nuts and bolts of it, it's like this was really poorly designed and put together.
Yeah.
But as long as it looks good on the outside, it kind of serves a purpose. So,
Yeah. And you said something really intriguing early on. You alluded to, our need for instant gratification. We've gotten so content with next day delivery not even costing anything anymore.
Yeah.
Like when I got into the e-commerce space 12, 13 years ago, next day delivery was easily $25 for even the major retailers.
Yeah.
Easily $25. Amazon at that time was really pushing it. You know, you could get next day delivery for, my God, well, I don't know, if you had Prime, it's anywhere from $4 to $6. I can't remember off the top of my head.
Mm-hmm.
Now you could have next day for free, and for $2 you could have same day delivery.
Yeah.
Like, it was funny, and it's great that we're having this conversation today, because this morning I had to run out, and we were running low on coffee for
Mm-hmm.
tomorrow, and you know, I go to this local roaster for it. So, you know, I quick ran over and got that, but then we're also running low on coffee filters. So I'm like, of course, I pull up Amazon, and the ones I wanted to get, they don't have for next day. And you know, I had the typical reaction I think most people have: like, son of a
So what the
bitch. Yeah, what the crap is this?
crap?
I can't have it, you know, today or even tomorrow. You know,
Right.
God damn it, I got to run to Target.
Yeah, it's true. So, I think that definitely plays into it. And I think ultimately it's a margins game, right? In that, as long as we can have our margins, that's all that matters. And we've built into people that it's maybe not a bad thing that we're just constantly replacing things. It's like, it doesn't
Yeah,
really
things have
bother
become
me.
disposable.
It doesn't really bother me. I throw this printer away. I'll just go buy a new one. So, I think while there's some good that can be had to be driven by brands that have a more sustainable view of things, ultimately it's going to be consumer driven. So if as consumers we don't change what we demand, it's going to be tough to see any major change at scale. With that said, I think there's always going to be a niche for both consumers and brands that want to do things in a more sustainable, more high quality way. Um, and that's where we kind of want to play, right? And we are playing, not kind of want to play, we are playing, because we see this in the services space as well. Services is incredibly hard. Yeah, it's really hard to build a product company because there's so much complexity to it. But I don't think people appreciate how incredibly difficult it is to run a services company, and a lot of it comes down to margins. And what ends up happening is that, in order to be profitable, companies, from a services perspective, are willing to put out cheap, flimsy, this is going to be obsolete products in order to be profitable, to make their margins. And I think part of it is that the consumer maybe isn't knowledgeable enough to know what's good and what's not. I think that definitely plays into it. And part of it is that, there's a belief, and I think they're probably right, from a lot of services companies, that it doesn't matter. Let's get ours. And it doesn't matter because the chance that these people that we're working with are here 12, 24 months from now is not very good. So they're not going to remember that we did a shoddy job, and then another team will come in and they'll renew our contract and we'll do it again. And so I think, part of it is just taking advantage of a very transient buyer, and a buyer that oftentimes isn't knowledgeable, right? And I'm sure we can think of things as consumers that we wouldn't be knowledgeable about. So for example, like, if you're putting me down in front of a bottle of $10 wine and $500 wine, I don't have no idea. Right? Like, I don't have enough knowledge to say why one is better than another. And that's a lot of buyers in the services space, is like, they just don't know. It's like, okay, I drink it and it has alcohol in it. Okay. And that's how I think a lot of buyers in the services space are, is they can't, what is it, a $2 check and a high end top shelf wine, they can't tell the difference between it. And so,
Yeah.
that often leads to services companies taking advantage of that buyer and taking a $2 check and marking it up to $100, because to the buyer, they have no idea. And if you brand it and position it well, it's like, oh, it's a nice $100 bottle of wine here, when it really isn't. So
I
I'm
had
gonna.
something and I lost it.
Okay. Well, then I will go back to. I'll kind of continue out this.
Yeah, yeah, go ahead. It'll come back to me.
Okay, I'll
I went to
continue
go say it and
out.
I was like, I lost what I was going to say.
I'll
So go ahead.
continue out this services play a bit more. So one of the things that we've been experimenting with internally is this three-tiered approach to how we view services, and I think the same model can be applied to tangible products or software products as well. And it kind of goes back to what we alluded to around kind of doing the job of what you do. Most companies that you interact with, whether you're buying services, whether you're buying software, or whether you're buying a hard good like a printer, most companies that you interact and buy from are focused on doing the job. The printer I have does a job, right? Put ink in it, send a job to it, prints it out, I grab it. In most services companies, it's the job, right? Most software that you buy, it does the job. I open it up, I type some stuff into it, and I save it. It's doing a job. Um, this lost art of thinking about it from a craft perspective is lost, and most companies aren't thinking about it. There are a few that think about it from it's not just a job. We have pride in our work, we have pride in our expertise, and we want to be true artisans. We want to be craftspeople, and we take pride in what we do. So it's not just slapping together a product as the job or giving a service as a job. It's taking that pride in knowing that we're true experts in what we do. And this is a lot of kind of going back to this whole concept of, you mentioned Disney or Discovery Plus with the Chip and Joanna Gaines network. I liken it to shows on Saturday morning on PBS. You can tell, watch a cooking show on Food Network and watch a cooking show on Saturday morning on PBS. Food Network, that's the job of cooking, right? It's like we're doing the job. The chefs on Saturday morning on PBS, you can tell that they take deep pride in their craft, and all those kind of woodworking shows. And there's the show where they remodel houses on PBS. It's been around for like 30 or 40 years.
Oh, this old
Hometown,
house.
this old house, right? Like you can tell that they take pride in what they do. That's the craft. And there are a handful of companies in each of the spaces, hard goods, software, services, that really are thinking about it from a craft perspective. And when you work with those brands, it just feels different and you get a different quality of product or service. And it's nice. Like it when you see it. But we've decided to even go beyond that. And this is where I think you get into extremely, extremely elite brands. And there are examples, again, in hard goods and software and in services of companies that have said, you know what, we're going to even go beyond the craft and we're going to think about the experience of what we create. And that's really what we've been focused on for the last, coming on 9 years now, is that, yeah, we do the job. Yeah, we take deep pride in the craft. We are true artisans, but it's even more than that. We want to focus on the experience that we're creating for our customers, the experience we're creating for our employees. And I think when companies get to that level, it is incredibly rarefied air. There are only an elite few companies in each category that have decided to move beyond the craft, because honestly, if you get to the craft of what you do, it makes you elite. It makes you in a different category. But when you move beyond the craft to the experience, you're literally in a league by yourself.
Yeah. So, with that, like if we start to compare quality with services versus quality with like where you're actually producing something tangible. Um, while yes, like you can try to fake it with a facade, but people will start to recognize the difference between something that is well made versus something that is slapped together. There's just a feel when you hold something that has, that's built with quality hardware, quality tangible goods. Um, it's How do you do that with a service organization? I know you're talking about the experience, and it's something you and I talk about all the time, but like part of me is like, it's, and again, I'm not downplaying some kind of product, like the effort that goes into building a product. And
Yeah.
that's part of it is like it is hard work to produce something of quality. But I think like while yes, there are those times where you gave the wine example, people can fake it. I think a majority of people, they get a feel that,
Yeah.
it's easy to tell when something is made cheaply versus not.
Yeah, and it's a lot more difficult in services, because with tangible goods, at least if you have some level of knowledge about what it is that you're holding or doing, it's easy to fill it, right? If I sit down to a cheap piano, or I sit down to, if I sit down to like $1,000 cheap piano and I play it, or I sit down to like a $20,000 really nice studio piano, you can just like how the keys feel, how it feels when you press, like it's instant. You can feel it, right? And then there's probably lots of consumer goods where that is the case. I think we talked about maybe rice cookers on our last episode. It could be cars, it could be chairs. I finally upgraded my office chair. I was sitting in a $70 chair from Walmart, and I upgraded to a $500 office chair, and it's like instantly you sit in it, you're like, okay, this feels different.
Yeah, I'm still
And
using the $99 Staples special.
dude, you gotta, I know you stand a lot, but man, this was another one of those things where I'm like, why did I wait so long to buy a nice chair? Because it is just such a different experience. And so I think those are the right words, right? Like, I sit in this chair and it just feels different than a Walmart chair, than the $70 Walmart chair. And that is how we've thought about it from a services perspective. We can fake it by hiring a high-end designer and putting really nice glossy designs to our deliverables, and our website could be perfectly polished and make us look incredible and amazing. But what it comes down to is, how do our clients feel working with us? And if they don't feel amazing, if they don't feel different, if they don't feel like they trust their data more, if they don't feel more secure and happy in their job, then we're not creating the experience that we're looking for. And so while it may be harder to kind of get to that state from a services perspective, really it's the same thing. It comes down to not how great the packaging is, not how great the marketing is, not how pretty it looks, but when I sit in the chair, when I engage with the service, does it feel amazing? And that's really been our how we've talked about measuring our level of success in moving from the craft to the experience of what we do.
So, with the time left, there is one part of this I want to make sure we don't miss. And I'll go ahead and say it. It's a controversial topic, but the idea of planned obsolescence. It's something that, I mean, I remember being in college, and that was something being talked about in my operations class. That is something some companies plan for, but it's controversial because no one wants to admit that they plan for products to to fail sooner,
To
and
wear
we
out for 100%. Yeah.
yeah, to wear out. No one wants to believe that, but what are your thoughts on that? Because I feel like planned obsolescence is something that is it's becoming more and more commonplace. Things are becoming disposable, and we've kind of already touched on this a bit, but I feel like things are becoming quickly disposable. Like, people plan to get a new $1,000 phone every other year. That's a lot of money every other year to spend on a phone.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. And I think one, it's potential laziness. Two, it's building in some kind of predictable new revenue. And three, again, I think there's a component to the consumer's expectations in it that need to come into play. I think the phone may be a slightly different outlier, maybe a different conversation. Most of the items that come to mind quickly for me that are planned obsolescence tend to be on the cheaper, more affordable end. And it's easy to make that decision to say, well, do I want to pay the extra premium for this high end product that I probably am never going to have to replace, or do I want to pay a lot less, but I know I'm going to have to replace it? We've talked about it with shoes, right? It's like, do I want to go to Payless and buy a $10 pair of shoes I know I'm going to have to replace in 6 weeks, or should I, pay $200 for this other pair? It's a lot more, but I probably am gonna not have to replace it for 5 to 10 years. I think about this. So with my Jeep, I bought a high end air filter. I think it cost me $60. It has a lifetime guarantee. I'm never going to buy another air filter for that Jeep. But when I'm in that buy decision, do I think, and do I really want to buy this $60 air filter, or is the $3 paper air filter good enough? Even though it's gonna be it's only going to last for a few thousand miles, I have to throw it away and buy a new one. Oftentimes, it's just so much easier, more convenient, and cheaper, at least in the short term, to say, I'll buy the one that's throwaway. And unfortunately, we think about that with services a lot too, right? It's there's two sides of the services coin, where we have companies saying, do I really really want to pay a premium to do this implementation right, um, knowing that it's going to cost me substantially more in the short term, or do I want to pay, and I don't want to pick on offshore, but offshore is typically really cheap in what they're comparing against. Do I want to, pay an offshore agency to do it for super cheap? And sure, I may have to redo it again in a year, but it's super cheap, so it doesn't really matter. On the other end of it, and the more, I guess, egregious end of it, you have agencies that plan for obsolescence, to your point again, and that was kind of your question, where it's like, we're going to build an implementation, we're going to build a data layer, we're going to design a analysis strategy, we're gonna architect an optimization program for you, we know is going to be obsolete in a year, because that's going to allow us to come back in and sell more services to redo it. And that's where I think agencies are lazy. They don't trust that they can scale and mature with a client. So rather than saying, our goal is to grow with our customers, and the way we're going to make money long term is to sell more and more sophisticated services to our clients, we don't trust that we have the ability to do that. So we're going to build in obsolescence to our services, so that we just are in constant maintenance and rebuild mode, so that we can guarantee that future revenue stream.
Since you bring that up, and again, you kind of jumped the gun on one of the next question I wanted to go down with
I
this
tend to
is,
do that
yeah, you
sometimes.
do that all the time. It's great. um, so like in services, because it's easy to tell sometimes, again, in tangible goods, where you get the feeling that they want to turn over product. Services, my question was going to be, does it exist? And yes, it does.
Hmm.
And you answered it well. Um, are there warning signs to services that, you know, or are there red flags that people should look out for, where it comes to this, where, a services company is trying to make sure that they become ingrained
Yes.
with constant logs of work?
Yeah, for sure. So the immediate red flags are, the services company you are working with does not want your team involved, meaning they want to create this curtain where they're doing all the work behind the curtain, and they don't want you to see what they're doing. That's an immediate red flag, and we've seen this quite a bit, unfortunately. Um, and I don't want to single out ad agencies, but they tend to be the ones that are the biggest contributor or violator of this, where they hide what they're doing behind the scenes, because they don't want your team to understand what they're doing, because they want to maintain complete ownership and keep it a bit secretive, so that never dries up. So if your services company agency that you're working with isn't involving your existing team, that should be a red flag. If the agency you are working with doesn't have it as part of their charter with you, to plan their own obsolescence, meaning our job as an agency should be to work ourselves out of a job, that should be a red flag. Our goal isn't to create dependencies. Our goal is to help guide and create solutions to problems. And again, if we're going to have long-term relationships with our clients, it's because we're solving new and more complex problems all the time. It's not that we're working on the same thing over and over again. I'm trying to think of a good analogy, but let's say you go to a trainer, and like your trainer is working on a certain set of things, maybe lifting weights or something, the goal of the trainer shouldn't be to like, okay, in order to keep Jim long term, I'm going to keep him from progressing. So I'm going to keep him like coming and we're going to work on this one thing over and over and over again. Like that shouldn't be the goal, right? Like the goal of your trainer shouldn't be like, I'm going to get Jim in shape. And so like he's going to run a faster marathon. So he doesn't want to work with me anymore. It should be, I want to get Jim to like be a competitive marathon runner. And then once he's got that, he's going to retain my services because then he's going to want to do an Ironman, right? And then once he starts doing Ironman, like I want him to retain my services because he wants to become an ultra runner. That's how agencies should look at it, and that's how clients should look at agencies. Is like they shouldn't want to keep me where I am. They should want me to push more and more and more, and that I retain their services as I progress in what I do. So if your agency is not interested in you progressing outside of like your current fit because they want you to keep buying that set of services from them, that should be a red flag. And you can see that in how well your agency is mentoring and training your team. If they're not, it's a red flag that they're simply there to do the work and they want to keep you potentially locked into doing that. So doing things behind the curtain, hiding things from your team, not mentoring and training, those should be immediate red flags, because ultimately, again, these things should be in house. If you're not working in a partnership with your agency partner to build more and more expertise in house, you've got the wrong partner. You probably, if you're using them as a contractor, fine, right? Like we've talked about the different reasons companies buy services, and one of them is we just need bandwidth, right? If you're just buying bandwidth, that's a different conversation. But if you're buying expertise and you're buying influence and you're buying objectivity, that should be being built in-house, and that should be flowing from the agency to your internal team. And if it's not, major red flag to avoid.
Yeah. I want to say it was like 15 years ago. I was, it was maybe 5, 6 years into my career at that point. And I kind of had that epiphany, working for a services company where it's like, yeah, like the, the easy thing is to make clients dependent upon you. And it was this moment of clarity. I'm like, why? No, because, we don't grow, they don't grow. We just keep solving the same things.
Mm-hmm.
It's this weird, and I'm going to call it a paradox, because believe it or not, while it feels like it's common sense, most people don't grasp it. The more you try to work yourself out of a job, the more someone wants to work with you.
That's what we've seen for sure.
Oh, I've seen it for the last 15 years throughout my career. Anytime there's that, someone always has a harder problem. And the more, and this is a very Zen thing, and it's almost like, think about like you're holding sand. The more you squeeze it, the more you try to hold on to it, the more it slips out of your hands.
Yep.
It slips through the cracks in your fingers, and next thing you know, it's not there. So the more you try to hold on to a client, the less chance of actually retaining them. Where the more you relax your hand, and the more you try to, again, going back to that, work yourself out of a job, owning less and less, and helping enable them to own more and more of what you originally came into work on, you're going to see that scope grow.
Yeah, it happens again. Yeah, it is an incredible paradox, but we see it all the time, and we're transparent in it because it's a conversation lots of companies are starting to ask, and I'm glad they are. Is they ask questions like, well, how can we make sure that we build this expertise in house? Like, we're really worried about becoming dependent on you. Good, you should be. And we don't want you to be. Our goal is to work ourselves out of a job. Our goal is to raise the overall expertise in your organization. um, the bulk of the time, we end up staying there a really long time. The difference is we don't stay there working on that same project over and over and over again to ad nauseum. We grow with the client. We take on more difficult challenges. Again, we graduate from the marathon to the Ironman. Like that's what we're doing with our clients. So while our goal is to work ourselves out of a job, the paradox is that it opens up a lot more work and a lot more opportunity to do that. And I guess in essence we do, right? If we think about the clients that have been with us the longest, from the job perspective, we are working ourselves out of the job because with the clients we've been with the longest, what we started doing, we no longer do with them, right? Like they've got that handled. In fact, I just had this conversation with one of our existing clients. They said, we want to talk about renewal to do this work. I'm like, no, you don't need us to do that anymore. You guys got this. We've got you to a place where you've got it, and that was the goal all along, for you to get to a point where you had this expertise in house and you don't need us anymore. We've achieved that. I don't want to talk about a renewal for that. If you want to talk about a renewal for some of these other things that we can advance you in, let's talk about that. But I'm not going to take your money to keep doing this because you don't need it. And that really is the goal, is to work ourselves out of that job. We want to stay connected, especially with great clients, but we need new work. We need to advance in what we're doing. And that really is the differentiator.
Yeah, totally. So yeah, I think that's everything I had on this topic. Was there anything we didn't touch on?
No, I mean, I think we covered the main points of it. And again, I think it's important to recognize and understand that there are differing options for differing consumers, and that's okay. I don't want to say that every planned obsolescence is bad or every low end quality, or maybe the low end isn't the right way to put it, but not high end, not high quality is bad, right? There's a need for the IKEA furniture. There's a need for the cheap Staples chair. There's a need that fits, and I think that that's okay. We're not saying that everyone needs to migrate to a high end artisanal that only fits a certain buyer. But what I am saying is that as manufacturers, as brands, as sellers, we need to be clear on what role we're playing and why. And I think more importantly, consumers need to understand what they want and be more vocal about it. And they have a huge pull on the future of how things are done. Again, our want it all now. We need our coffee filters right this minute. If we continue that trend, we have to be okay living with the results, and that's that we're going to have the vast majority of goods and services that we consume are going to be low quality, high breakdown rates, and if we're okay with that, that's fine. But if we're not, we have to know as consumers that it's in our hands to make the decisions that we are going to support higher priced, higher turnaround times in quality to be able to truly invest in things that are going to last and be more meaningful. That's in our hands as consumers to make that choice.
Very well said. So I think that's a good thing, good spot to wrap up on, a great way to summarize it.
Awesome.
Cool. All right. So that's it for this week. I will catch you later.
See ya.
See ya.